Hello, it's very good to see you. Good to be back. I enjoyed my holiday. I've started my annual meetings, only 11 to go. Someone's going to read a lesson about the Good Shepherd, I understand, aren't they, Callie?
Yes.
I didn't think David had a message from Bishop Karen.
Yes, not to waffle.
Stop waffling. Carry on.
Right, okay. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, therefore can I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He shall refresh my soul and guide me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup shall be full. Surely goodness and loving mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
How many times we've read that at funerals?
Or sang it.
Or sang it.
Yes.
But as I've learnt something already today, and it's only 9:01 in the morning, and that is that the fourth Sunday of Easter can be referred to as Good Shepherd Sunday. So thank you, Callie, for educating me on that fact. But I think it's a lovely psalm, the Lord's my shepherd, and it really does say, actually, yes, all right, I've already talked about funerals, but there is a time when, you know what, we get lost, we're unsure of what we're up to, and the thought of God coming and putting his arm around us and bringing us back into the fold and saying, there, it's all right, all's okay. And it's just so nice and reassuring, and it's an appropriate thing to talk about the Good Shepherd on the fourth Sunday of Easter, because I think the last two Sundays we've talked about the restoration of Peter after he denied Jesus, Jesus meeting Thomas after he doubted that he'd risen, and Jesus met Peter and restored him. Jesus met Thomas and showed him his hands, and here Jesus is offering to do that for all of us as well. The Lord's my shepherd, therefore can I lack nothing. The other thing that always comes to mind is when I did pilgrimage on Israel as a curate, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, there's a valley that goes between Jerusalem and the River Jordan. And halfway through the desert, coming out of the wall of the valley, is a stream of fresh running water for drinking.
Gorgeous.
And the top of the valley, the temperatures can reach plus 50 degrees C. So the phrase walking through the valley of the shadow of death, if you climb out of that valley, you can't live very long in that level of temperature. So you're in the shadow of death, and literally halfway through, you've got this lovely fresh stream of running water that you can walk through in the cool waters and have the comfort of fresh water on your journey. Is a lovely thought. And then we topped it off with, in sight of this stream coming out of that valley, we celebrated Holy Communion, where the Bishop of Exeter, the altar that we had was literally the upended bonnet of a Volkswagen Beetle that we balanced on some stones and then put a cloth on it to celebrate Holy Communion.
How wonderful. It was lovely hearing you describe that, Chris, because I wonder if that was the very scene that inspired David. You know, he wrote this psalm.
It's a possibility, or it was raised as a possibility when we were there, that it could well have been, which may be why I've remembered it in that level of detail without doing any research. But when you're in dangerous situations, like if you get out the valley, it's plus 50 degrees C, and your life's in danger, you can be down in that valley with cool, fresh streams and cool water to drink.
The bit, excuse me, the bit that I really, really love, and the translation I read doesn't quite put it this way, but where it says, "You spread a table before me," and it says in this translation, "in the presence of those who trouble me," but often it's "in the presence of my enemies," in the translation. And I just love that idea that, my goodness, you can be really that badly up against it, and David was up against it a lot, and have enemies all around you, and feel utterly besieged. And then there's this idea of a table being spread out in a meal, and that lovely convivial, relaxing. You can sit and eat and be comforted, and your cup shall be full. And people can't sit and eat and relax at a meal normally when they're being besieged by their enemies. But there's something about God and the peace that God brings. It's a very peaceful psalm, isn't it?
It is. It is. I just typed into my computer, as Chris does occasionally when we're talking, what are the characteristics of a good shepherd?
Mm.
And apparently, according to the church in Canada, there are 8 of them.
What are they?
I thought you might never ask me that question, Callie. According to this, it's a story we find in the pericope of John's Gospel.
The pericope.
There we are, chapter 10, which is obviously
we thought
where
it was
we are.
pronounced pericope.
Pericope, whatever. Anyway, the examples are that because the shepherd goes on ahead of his sheep, you see, and his sheep follow him. So trustworthy, provision, sacrificial, invested in something relational and visionary. That's for shepherd leaders in the church.
Invested in something. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Well, I guess invested in keeping the sheep safe, otherwise you're in trouble with the owner of the sheep, because the shepherd, of course, is not necessarily the owner of the sheep, are they?
That's like the difference between the hired hand, though, and the shepherd. Yeah. The one who really, really cares about the sheep, who are definitely his.
That nearly made me feel rather heretical then, because invested in something, I thought, yeah, I'll go and get shares in mint sauce. That'll look after the sheep.
Chris, you always have to bring it back to waffle. No wonder Bishop Karen gets upset with us all the time. But there we are. That's interesting. That that there is a recognised shepherd leader, kind of leader quality, and it's all to do with outreach apparently in the church in Canada. How do we reach out as shepherd leaders? Which is quite interesting, of course, for our Roman Catholic friends at the moment, because they're looking, or hopefully by the end of today, they'd be thinking they may have a new head shepherd to lead them.
White smoke, not black smoke.
Exactly. And so it's interesting. And will the person have those qualities? Perhaps that's what the cardinals are praying for or working on at the moment. Who knows?
Sure, we, along with millions of people around the world, are also praying for those qualities in the new head shepherd of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and perhaps also the Church of England, as we have to, find the next Archbishop of Canterbury. Perhaps those are the things we should be getting through to the committee. We want those shepherd leader qualities in the person we're looking for. I'm sure those who have to do the job will be looking at that. But I thought it was interesting because we all know you can find anything you want on the internet today if you just type in the right words, can't you? Would we as class ourselves perhaps in our roles as shepherd leaders?
I think inevitably it's something we do, but maybe we don't like to think of it as that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's I like the interesting different models of shepherds. We have this traditional model of the shepherd walking in front and the sheep following behind, and then the little sheepdog at the back picking up the strangers.
Yeah.
But there's also an awful lot, I think, of what we do is the sheep that goes and falls in a hedge or a ditch, and you're going to pick them up again and put your arm back round them and bring them up and put them back within the flock. And, when one falls over or hurts its leg, you're putting it back in and
using the rod and the staff.
So we're doing the good bits and the looking after bits. And I think one of the great things I really like about the post-Easter period is the things like the restoration of Peter. Peter denied Jesus. Jesus seeks him out and says, "Peter, do you love me?" and brings him back in the fold. With Thomas was missing from that room the first time, and Thomas said, "I want to see the scars." Again, Jesus met Thomas and said, "Here's the scars, come back in the fold." And this whole Psalm 23 is doing exactly the same. You think you've done something wrong, you think you've fallen off the wagon, you think God doesn't love you. Jesus says, "Come back in the fold, you're still with me. Whatever you've done, we can get back into the fold again and we can move forward." And I think there's a great gathering there of the weak, the weary, the injured, the suffering, of Jesus bringing us all back into the fold. It's not just I'm the leader in front, follow me or you're lost.
There's something about the nomadic nature of shepherds, biblical shepherds. There's something about the journey of life and all the sheep, the flock being gathered for the journey and not falling behind or going astray on the journey of life. And of course, the walking through the valley of the shadow of death and life having its pitfalls and its difficult moments and all the rest of it, but being led through that and the gathering of people, keeping people together on that journey that we're all on.
I think for me, if we are identifying with this Good Shepherd Sunday and we recognise that Jesus is the Messiah, the ultimate divine person that we believe faithfully in, then it is about following him because he's the shepherd. We follow his teachings, we follow his way. But I also like, Chris, your thought that he even needs one of us, perhaps, being the little dog at the back, making sure that everyone is gathered and is going in that same in that same way. And yes, there will be valleys of shadows of death, but there'll also be valleys bright and full of hope and joy and excitement as well, won't there? And that's
He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters.
Yeah, refreshes my soul.
And that's the joy of a pilgrim faith, isn't it? That the sadness, death, life, hope, lying in green pastures, clean spring waters, they're all essential to how we follow and what we understand about being a follower, a disciple of Jesus himself.
The paths of righteousness.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
And so there we are. So, I shall go out and think perhaps over the next few weeks, have I got some of those qualities the church in Canada would have expected me to have if I was over there? I hope so. I'm sure we all have in many ways, but not just us.
I'm sure you do, David.
I'm sure many of us do. And hopefully we can put them to good use, particularly during the next 11 annual meetings. There we are. Well, thanks, Chris, for waiting. Because, what you didn't know, I had problems today getting into this meeting because my computer seemed to not want to upload Zoom. I think I'd had an update for Zoom on my thing, which I hadn't done quick enough. So it all had to be restarted, and Chris and Callie had started by the time I arrived, so they stopped it to allow me to catch up with them. So thanks for that. And next week hopefully we'll be there, spot on.
Lovely.
And the viewer will notice the change will have been utterly seamless.
Seamless, Chris. Seamless.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Well, thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you. Have good days as we move on for the rest of the week.
That's right. And join us for Good Shepherd Sunday on Sunday, wherever, at a church near you. They'll be talking about shepherds, I'm sure.
Yeah, come and see us. Learn about the shepherds. Kelly might even have a toy sheep in her service at St Mary's.
Well,
Are all aging.
we actually have a shepherdess that worships with us in both Stoke Abbot and Burstock, and she's very kind because she brings her sheep into the churchyard at Stoke Abbot, and they graze it instead of having to get the motor out. So it's all very eco-friendly. So
Very good.
I don't know whether the sheep are in the churchyard at the moment. I'll find out when I go to their meeting later on today. But if not, keep a watch out. Stoke Abbot and the sheep are well known and always a pleasure and a good sight to see.
Lovely to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.